Mind Bend. Non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness for Mind Bend Creative.
Jason Estes, thank you so much for joining me on the Mind Bend podcast. It's been something I've been looking forward to for a while since we connected at the Quantum Wellness Spa. So much to talk about, but here's the thing I always like to do. Anybody who's blessing me with their time and coming on the show, I want them to be able to use this as a platform to speak about what they're most passionate about, what they think people can take the most value away from. Because a lot of people will come to this podcast with the notion of psychedelics at the forefront of their curiosity, and I want everything involving the human psyche to be at play here, right? It's a fascinating experience, consciousness, and I love to geek out on it with people who are fascinated by it as well. So knowing that, please educate me about those things that you're most passionate about right now and that you think people would benefit from learning about.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me right now is rethinking wellness. So we're getting Quantum Wellness Spa LA up and running, right? And the idea there is to rethink wellness. For right now, humanity thinks that critical health and wellness go in the same category. And I think that that's my biggest point that I want to help change in the next few years.
Critical health and wellness go in the same category. That's a confused point of view.
Yeah, it's a hugely confused point of view.
When you say critical health, what does that term mean?
Well, the average person, at least in America, I would say probably worldwide, but in America for sure, because of all the over-signaling, is in critical health and they don't know it. And that's a big problem, right? So if you think of health and wellness, you think of like them as the same thing. Like people even use them interchangeably. Oh, right. Well, I'm healthy. Oh, well, I'm well. No, this is different. So well is like something that can hold something. Health is the container itself. So if you think about it, your well runs dry. You're not in wellness. You're actually in something else. You're maybe defining health. And the struggle is that there's different phases. So I want to kind of go through this real quick and then we can go deeper.
Okay. And I always, forgive me, I always like to ask questions if I catch something that's really stuck in my saddle.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the first stage of life I call health, right? That's where we want to be. Health is where we're learning and defining and figuring out who we are with ourselves. The problem is that we've delegated authority of health to others. So in other words, I want to know what health means to you, because I need to know what health means to me. Okay, well, that could be great if I understand what you understand health to be, and then I take that and resource it, and then I understand and apply what's real for me and let the rest go. Then I'm actually enhancing and strengthening the container that is health, right? But if I go to a doctor and I delegate full control and authority over to that doctor, and he says, you're going to take this prescription, this prescription, this prescription, this prescription, and hands it to me, and I take that, without ever looking up what it does, how it affects me, or even asking whether it's good for me, what I've done is I've delegated my fullness of health over. And what actually happens is now I'm moving into critical health. Now, this is important because critical health is the kitchen sink perspective of life. If you're in critical health, you throw the kitchen sink at it, you hope something sticks. That's how people approach life. The problem is that in health, you're supposed to figure out what works for you. In critical health, you do throw the kitchen sink at it. But then there's another category called wellness. Wellness is you know enough about your own health that you start to take optimization and bring it in and see whether it actually moves you into an overflow state or not. So the last stage is optimization. Optimization is not a stage you can live in. People think you can, but optimization is pure signals. That's all it is. Yeah. So when people think of health and wellness and optimization, they often think that they're all in the same. It's one of the biggest things with the biohackers that I have an issue with is people are biohacking. Well, biohacking means you're signaling the body to do something. Now I want to get to the most important thing ever, and that's resources. In the world that I live in, there's only two things. There's signals and there's resources. And some things can be both, but most things aren't. Most things are pure signals. So when people are taking a prescription drug, what are they doing? They're signaling their body to do something. They're telling something to do something less or do something more.
The prescription is the signal.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're in a phase where your signals are broken and you're not able to do that because you're in critical health and you need to reestablish a pattern or a signal, learn about why you're doing that. Take the thing, learn from the thing, and then move forward. We're taught that we need to be consumers, but we're actually builders. So what that means is our body actually learns things. And this is proven. Like I can go fasting for like 40 days with no food and almost no water. And that's not supposed to be scientifically possible. And yet I can do it because my body knows how to create resources from the quantum field. And that's where true wellness comes in, and optimization is the highest optimization is being able to read the quantum field and pull the nutrients from that space. In the Bible, they called it manna from heaven, for instance.
Got it. That's probably one of the earliest iterations of the experience of the quantum field.
Yeah.
You
And they
have
lived with harmony then too. So
you brought it up just now, and so knowing that there's a whole trove of questions in that first segment, I do want to address quantum field because we're going to be speaking about that further in this conversation. For those who have just tuned in 5 minutes ago, the quantum field is
everything.
everything.
The quantum field is infinite resources. It's all the answers you've ever wanted. It's everything that you could ever need, all in one thing. And it's less than an inch away from us at all times. But the problem is our ability to receive that information into ourselves, right? We have all of these filters, and those filters are created because of improper signaling. We've been sent all of these signals, and our antenna bends and breaks, and then we go into a health crisis so that we can then repair that. What are fevers? If you look, after you get through a fever, you actually are healthier than you were before. Your HRV, all these other things start to increase. Why? Because your body went through something, it was challenged, and it evolved. We're designed to evolve. We're not designed to stay in these complacent little tiny boxes that were written prescriptions to stay in. We're here to evolve, to become whole again. Why is it that thousands of years ago we used to live to be thousands of years old, and now we can barely get to 100? And yet we are supposed to be more advanced than we were then. Look at architecture. Look at everything. We've stalled out as humanity. We've believed that technology is more powerful than we are, but we're the greatest technology ever built.
When do you think the turning point, is it the Industrial Revolution? Is that where technology superseded the spiritual or energetic growth?
I would say that's definitely a part of it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the 1800s is around the time that I think that we started to go backwards because we started to give more power to technology instead of seeing it as just tools. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with tools. I'm a huge fan of vehicles. I'm a huge fan of all these things.
And toilets.
Yeah, of course, right?
Plumbing.
Well, I mean, there's a whole conversation there that we can go down a rabbit hole for.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, there's nothing wrong with plumbing and all the other things, right? But we think that a lot of the stuff that comes out of us is toxic waste, right?
Okay.
But it's actually not. It's lots of resources that can be engineered and have been to create even greater things for us. Like look at fecal matter studies, for instance. There are so many things that we're just starting to scratch the surface of because we spent so much money and so much time outside of ourselves.
Okay.
We're just now starting to look into the thing. And when we start to look inward, we start to find who we really are.
Okay.
That's dangerous because if you start to know who you are, then the world can't fit you in boxes anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why this is such an important thing and why I'm honored to be on your podcast is because you're helping people bend so that they can see things from different angles, right?
Yes.
I'm always about breaking the brain because if you can break the brain for just a moment, you can see that the reticular activating system that stopped you from seeing what's real is actually the thing that's helped you to see what is real as well. And that's a complicated thing. It's a paradox, right? But at the same time, it's how it works. The whole world is a paradox.
When we break the brain, whether it's in a one-on-one conversation or a personal experience, some kind of revelation or epiphany, what is key to reintegrating and to optimizing from that experience?
So again, we go back to the beginning, right? If you're in a critical state, you don't want to break your brain. You don't want to even bend your brain. You're in a critical state. You're trying to just survive. And if you're just trying to survive, having a critical thinking brain isn't going to help you because it actually costs more resources to critically think. So we go back into time and space and you see why we are where we are. So we stopped critically thinking and we started to get people away from critically thinking because we wanted to save them. We wanted them to be safe and to feel safe. And so we kept creating boxes and boxes and we're like, hey, that wall, it's going to keep you safe. Well, what is it keeping you safe from? Well, it's keeping you safe from nature. Okay, why is nature something that you should be afraid of? Well, you should be afraid of it because blank, 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 blank. Well, but that's your experience. And then those people who were in authority created those experiences as total experiences. Well, this is going to happen to everyone, so I have to defend them. And that protector vibe survived and kept humanity safe for a very long time so that it could flourish. But now it's time. We're entering the quantum age. As of March 18th of 2024, we entered the quantum age. That's why we're about to get our very first quantum computer. That's going to change everything. If you want to talk about bending the mind, imagine AI and quantum computers. It's a terrifying thought, and it's a benevolent and amazing thought as well, depending on who decides to do what with it and how. And again, this goes back to tools. Tools are just tools. There is no bad tool. It's how you use the tool, right? And I believe that by the time that we finally are given quantum computers, which is the end of this year, that we're going to be in a state where we're ready to use them. There are so many major things happening on the world stage right now to help us to see clearly. We're moving out of critical health. It's actually happening. You're seeing more and more technology starting to come out that understands signals and resources. Like the quantum energy wellness bed's a great example, right? The ability to have a technology that fits all levels is insane because it helps people in critical health. It helps people in health because you can actually learn more about yourself through the process, and it provides more resources than signals, which that's all of our goal, right? Imagine if you were more resourced up, how much more your life would be. The average person's DNA's conductivity, because of the ability for it to process, is about 3 to 7%. That means that the electricity running through your body right now is 3 to 7% of what it should be in your DNA, which is actually the codes that tell you how to live life.
Of what it should be, of what the capacity is?
Yeah. So, for instance, Cloud, which is a void space technologies product, moves that to 98%. So think about that. Now, this is just the scratching of the surface of monoatomics. We're just now beginning to understand how we can move into the next stage. And as we start to do that, I believe in the next 100 years, we're going to be living to be thousands with no issue because we'll understand health is our birthright. And from there, we can expand into wellness. And in wellness, we overflow. Well, when we're overflowing, we are creative. We're creating things, but we're creating things because we have the resources to do so. And this is the problem with critical health people coming up with the rules. Look at like all of the people that are making the rules. None of them are healthy people.
You mean the actual care providers, the doctors, the frontline responders?
The people that are supposed to be in charge. Like if I wanted to learn something, right? Like it doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to go to a person that's living that thing. 100%. Like if you're not living that thing, why would I want to go learn from you? Right. And this is how mentorship, this is how everything in the past used to be. You would find somebody that you appreciated what they had, whatever it was, didn't matter. I don't mean coveted, but appreciated it. You were like, this person has worked. They've gotten to where they are. I want to learn from them. And then you would go up to them. We're in an age where like everybody is a self-help guru these days. Even if they only read one book, now they're a guru of it. So the problem with that is gurus, they claim the power of others for themselves so that they can feel better for themselves. Whereas like you are actually yourself. You are here. You're having this podcast with me. I'm not trying to make you anything. I'm just presenting ideas so that you can apply what's real for you and let the rest go. Now what happens is your health expands. And what's crazy is the more that you actually come into your natural state of who you are, which is going to be very different than mine, you're going to naturally start to heal. And we have studies that prove that.
Where are we at when we are fresh human babies?
Our purest form. Yeah. So we have brand new bioantennas. We have the misunderstandings of our parents, which we do have to work through. That's true. But
which we're imbued with, energetically,
exactly.
Emotionally,
Yep.
in our DNA. It's
exactly,
really,
yeah. But that's so that the lineage of the intelligence can also survive, right? So yes, your problems and your struggles, but also your blessings. All of that stuff comes through the DNA. People are like, well, that sucks. What if I was born from bad parents? Guess what? You can change your DNA. It's proven many times over. It's easy to change your DNA. In fact, split personality people, when they change into another personality, it literally changes their DNA on the spot. They can test it.
Wow.
So as you start to look at the research around DNA and where we are, right? And again, keep in mind, we spend like very little money and time looking into ourselves. We're always looking at the stars. We're trying to understand everything external.
And it's why some of our revelations and some of our moments where we really have done that internal experience, that's why they resonate so strong. And they're lasting impressions.
And resonation. I'm glad you used that word, right? Your body is full of these things called bioantennas. For anyone that's new to the concept bioantenna, go look it up. It will change your life.
And you can get into that as much as you want to also. Okay. I know we only have a limited amount of time, but bioantennas.
Bioantennas.
Yeah.
Biophotons and bioantennas. Those two words, if you actually understand them, you will understand everything in life. But you got to understand those words. Those are the two most valuable words I will ever teach. Bioantenna and biophoton. Biophoton, living light particle. Bioantenna is inside your body. It's inside plants. It's inside everything. Bioantennas are what actually translate information. They're the thing that receive the information and then send the signal. The average person's body is full of trillions of bioantennas and they're broken.
Are they working when they're a baby?
Yes. But the moment that EMFs interfere, everything changes. And it's one of the biggest killers.
Okay. EMF is the primary technological component of a disability to continue to function at the highest rate.
Because EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, are signals, right? So what is our bioantenna designed to read? The signal of light. Well, what is an electromagnetic frequency? It's a wavelength of light. So what happens is they bombard us, and then our bioantennas start shattering or breaking, or worse, they tune to the wrong direction. Now, this is where we could spend hours.
Sure.
But when a bioantenna tunes in the wrong direction, we start to move towards aggression, fear, anxiety, depression, all of these things, right? When we're moving in the other direction, it moves the opposite. If you take a flower and you move it and you keep turning it so that it never gets the sunlight properly, even though it's growing towards it and you keep turning it, right? Then what happens is that flower will eventually die. Why? Because it's not being able to read the sunlight properly. This is important to understand because we are like flowers. And every moment of every day, we're being bombarded by all of these electromagnetic frequencies that are constantly keeping us spinning. So we're not able to find the true source, no matter what it is. This is a very critical problem, and why silent spaces that don't have electromagnetic frequencies, or the number one big product right now is these EMF blockers, right? You keep hearing about them. EMF blockers are not real. People believe they are, and they want to believe they are, but they're not real. Because what happens is you can't destroy energy. You can repurpose it, which there are now translator devices. Like we have some patches at Void Space that actually translates things into biophotons. So it takes an electromagnetic frequency, takes the corrupt sequences, helps repair that corrupt sequence and moves it forward. That's technology. But a blocker, all that does is it causes a feedback to spin until eventually the momentum builds enough that it pushes through the block. Well, now what you get is all that information at once. It's the same thing as like doing a cleanse, right? You have all the sickness in your body, you don't know it. Then you do a cleanse and all of a sudden you feel horrible. You get a Herxheimer reaction. Well, you get that because you've overwhelmed your system by putting all these toxins in your system for like 10 years and then thinking you can get rid of them all in one day. Versus doing like a clean fast where you stabilize and you work on it, and then and that fast might only be 5 minutes.
Let's give our audience something to latch on to in terms of your orientation, okay? So people often get born, start to investigate things, find that they have a proclivity towards a certain area of interest or study. Maybe they mature in that and begin to become acquainted and have an idea of a vocation, right? So where are you from, Jason?
That's a very big question. In which way?
Were you born in Canada?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Texas.
Texas. Okay.
Yep.
I've had a thought. Maybe that's because of Jeremy, but you were born in Texas,
Yep.
and that's your primary residence.
Yep.
Now. Okay. Cool. And what were your interests early on in your life? Were you a science person, or a spirituality person, religious studies, or economics, or theater? What were your?
I mean, I loved everything as a kid.
Yeah.
And then it got broken. And then everything changed.
Okay.
And then I joined the military and I had to find myself again. It was a whole like hero's journey story according to the world. But reality is I was a kid who misunderstood reality and spent the rest of my life trying to understand it.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of kids out there who know the truth and who are being told something that's completely opposite of that.
Correct. Yes.
And it fucks them up.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
And then all kinds of craziness can unfurl from that. And then people who haven't understood it themselves are trying to apply the wrong solutions to a different problem, and that just further confounds the issue.
Yeah.
So tell me about the work that you're doing that people can find who have been in that broken place, whether they're 14 or 24 or 55, wherever they're at. What is it Void Space Technologies? Is that the manifestation of the work that you've done? Is that the vision of the practical application?
It's one of them, yeah.
Okay.
So Void Space Technologies is like a research and development company that's developing fifth dimensional technology for the next age, right? But then you
dimensional
have
technology, is that what you
fifth
said?
dimensional.
Fifth dimensional technology.
Yeah, for the next stage, because we're coming into the next stage. Like, well,
The
we're
quantum
technically
age.
here,
Okay.
but the first few years of a new age, no
Okay.
one really notices. It's always like right after, and they're like, "Oh, wow! On that day, everything changed."
Yeah.
But they can't look at that in the moment because they're so in the moment that they don't see that, right? And then they also have all the jadedness of the past. But Masters of the Void organization is another one. That's where the teachings are, and everything is free there. So like you can watch any of my videos. This will be on there as well. So
Okay. Masters of the Void.
yeah, MTVO I think is the thing that you would search for on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the idea is this, right? You're born, you're a master. You really are.
Yeah.
You have the only misunderstandings you have are the ones that your parents didn't get to resolve. And those misunderstandings are only at a base level. So they're not even actualized yet. So you haven't enforced them in your cellular memory.
Okay.
And that brings me to the most important thing around the body is your cellular memory. Nobody talks about it. But as a baby,
That's
you don't.
not body keeps the score.
Exactly. That's what it is. But as a baby, you don't have a cellular memory yet. You have the DNA that has the misunderstandings and the things around it that you've taken on as packets, right?
And how can you not have sympathy for that?
Exactly. But you haven't put it out yet. So those packets of information that your parents have for you, you haven't unpacked those. The moment you unpack those and you have experiences of your own, you start to develop cellular memory.
Okay.
And that's a cellular cycle. So every 21 days, you change your cellular memory. 21 days. This is really cool. That's why if you can actually do any practice program and commit to it for 21 days straight, you're a completely different person.
Every 21 days, you change your cellular memory?
Yep.
It automatically happens?
Yeah. And this is where bioantennas and all the cool things come in.
Okay.
So if you were to do the same thing as like a repeated practice, I call it incremental growth. So let's say that you do one push-up every day for 21 days.
Okay.
Your body in 21 days is going to acknowledge that that is something that's important to it, and it's going to start to shift everything around for that to be important. So the cool part is we talked about how you have bioantennas and that they send signals and they receive signals, right? Well, antennas sending signals is how reality is created. This is where we get into all the fun conversations that we could spend hours on as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love talking about pseudosciences. I love talking about the quantum field. I love talking about everything. But realistically, it all boils down to signals and resources. If you have the right resources, when you receive a signal, you're able to then send a signal. If you don't, then you receive the signal and then you have to process the signal. And
That's the nature of the human being.
Yes.
That's the divine nature of the human being.
Yeah.
Sending and receiving.
Yeah.
Communication. And an implied symbiosis, because to have something sent, you need something to receive.
Yep. And so what happens is now, because we live in a world with mostly critical health, people are backlogging that information. So they're getting all these signals, but they're not able to share signals back. And so what you get is what I call psychic vampires, people that don't know that they're doing it, right? I'm not saying that they're trying to actively take from you, but they only know how to take because they don't know how to share. And the reason they don't know how to share is because they're getting all these signals and it's backlogging and they're just trying to get it out of them. And so they just start dumping all of their misunderstandings on you all at once. And they can't help that. And the reason is because we don't live in spaces like, and short of going out into a real forest, and again, there's a difference between engineered forests and real forests.
Oh my goodness.
In short of going to a real forest, there's no place to go and get your bioantennas retuned, which is why the quantum energy wellness bed became such an important part of the process, is like being able to live the life that we live. Because I don't foresee in the next 100 years us coming out of boxes and changing. Maybe we'll move to domes. That's a hope for me. We'll maybe move into geodesic domes and come into like bioceramics and all that fun stuff. But in the next 100 years, how do we live better the way that we are now? Obviously, it's great to create choices, right? And there are people that live on the fringes of society and they're doing the best that they can to create choices there. I came and tackled the problem with here we are now. How do I build stuff from here to the future so that people can make better choices as they are without having to give up their life that they've created? Because to ask somebody to make a radical life change to go live in the forest for the rest of their life, well, that would be ideal in like the bioantenna perspective. It's not ideal from the mental perspective because you have your parents and your entire lineage's misunderstanding. So how do you resolve those things that you have misunderstood when you're only in nature? You can't. And the reason is because you have this thing called echelons. I have misunderstandings in my life that can only be played out through interaction with human beings in boxes like this because my parents had misunderstandings and their parents had misunderstandings and their parents had misunderstandings. And so lineage density that we take on as birth has to be resolved in these boxes. But we are strong enough to remove those boxes by choosing actions and changing our cellular memory.
Okay, so, civilization implies, I think, people gathered together. Is that fairly reasonable?
That's a fair one.
So again, in that sending the signal and retrieving and responding, if you are completely alone in isolation and wilderness, though your bioantennas may be at their most optimal to function, who else are you interrelating with? Is it the wisdom with the stones and the trees and the roots and the frogs, or are other people integral to the soul's evolution, to the psyche's evolution?
If you look at some of the greatest inventors to ever exist, they never went to school, or they went to school and then they unlearned everything by going out into nature. If you look at like, I think it was like Ford and a few other people, I'm not good with names, but they had a thing where every year on the year, no matter what, they would go to a random forest that they went to, and they'd turn off everything they had, all their devices, everything they had, and they would just go and sit in nature together and have conversations. And you look at what's happening with like the men's movements and the women's movements, and then everybody's going back to nature to find themselves, but in groups. And that's important because without having the other person there, it doesn't work, right? The Bible says where two or more are gathered, I too am there.
Meaning that it's a more optimal situation than being in total isolation.
Yeah. If we were meant to live as an alone individual, then the world wouldn't be designed in a two-part system.
Yeah.
And that's reality, right? We live in a duality verse currently. Now we're changing that. We're moving into, instead of victim, victimizer, empath, narcissist, all these words that are duality based, we're moving into creator perspective. That's the quantum age. But that's a complicated thing to change in the brain of people that have an entire set of lineage that tells them duality is the only way forward. I'm either this or that, right? Well, no, you're all. But you can't realize that you're all because your signals can't receive that signal. And they can't receive that signal because you have backlogged information that needs to be resignaled. And that struggle that keeps happening over and over and over again. How do we break the cycle is the question that everybody keeps asking. And the answer isn't simple. It's not something that I can tell every person individually how to do, because that's not what we're here for. But what I can do is be myself as best I can, and that frees others to do the same. And by doing that through presence teaching, we start sending and receiving the right signals again. And instead of being spun around by the chaos and craziness of the over-signaling world, our flower starts to point in the right direction. And it stays in the right direction because nothing is stronger than us when we know ourselves. But the problem is that like I can go and stand and hug a 5G tower and not have any experiences like everybody else. But I had to learn how to take that signal and repurpose it and understand it. That's why the technology I've built does that, is because I had to master that within myself through exposure therapy. Experience, figure out what broke, how do I repair it? Experience, figure out what broke, figure out how to repair it. Continue to do that until I figured out how to have my bioantennas be bombarded by this high level signal and not even be wounded. Well, when you can do that, what happens? You can stand in the sea and let it run all over you, and you don't get pulled out to sea. And that's the magic of what humanity is moving into, because in the quantum age, everyone will know themselves. They will. Like I said, it's going to take 3 years before humanity starts to really understand what that means. Because where we are now, we're about to get a quantum computer. We're about to be able to have anything at the touch of our fingertips. And that is going to be an extremely dangerous phase, because a lot of people are going to abuse that phase. But again, it's not the tool that's the problem. It's the people and their own misunderstandings. But the good news is the next generation after that is going to have the understandings necessary to work with that.
I would hazard a guess that more people under the age of 27 are familiar with the concept of manifestation, at least in the United States, than there were when I was under the age of 27.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that concept can mean a lot of variations on exactly what that is, but psychedelic means mind manifesting, right? So we make manifest that which we hold in our mind, that which we can visualize and anticipate and feel and bring into the quantum field, to bring from the quantum field, right? So talk about the idea of manifesting as it relates to the quantum age or the truth of the quantum.
So I have a shirt. On the shirt, it says, save a unicorn, right? And on the back,
save a unicorn?
Yeah. And on the back, it says, stop the law of attraction. And this shirt is my most controversial shirt that I wear.
Save a unicorn, stop the law of attraction.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Because people keep using the law of attraction. And the law of attraction is a universal law. It's not designed to be used. And this is very complicated because a lot of people are like, wait, what? I was following you all the way until you said that. Do you know more now than you did before you came?
You mean into the life?
Yeah. Before you came here, when you created all the plans that you would have for this life, do you know more now than you did then?
I would just guess yes.
Really? Wow, that's impressive. I don't nowhere near know anything in comparison to the infinite self that I was before I got down here into the finite space that is humanity.
Well, maybe I thought that I was learning lessons each
Oh.
time I enter into this experience.
Yeah, but do you have access to why you're learning the lessons yet?
Do I have access to why I'm learning lessons? Oh, maybe on a level that I don't recognize in this very moment.
But this conscious being that has a reticular activating system that's got bumpers and all this other stuff, are you greater than you were before to the point that you can actually know what's best for you versus the infinite self that was?
Okay, so if the answer is no, then...
It's not necessarily no. For me, it's no.
Okay.
I don't know more than the infinite self. I am not a fully embodied infinite. I'm not God on earth. I'm not that. I'm just Jason, doing the best I can.
Sure, that's me too, but no, I'm Matthew.
There you go. Awesome. So why would I affect a universal law or principle with my own misunderstandings? And there's two answers.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure.
First
Sure.
answer is because I want to feel powerful. That comes from the ego. Second answer is because I'm so broken and I need to see those reflections.
Yeah, a lot of people are desperate.
Yeah, exactly. And that desperation is the brokenness.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being broken. Everyone is, right?
Yeah.
But using the law of attraction from that space creates an over signal from a wound that then causes your life to fall off its hinges. And here's an example, right? So a lot of people want a red fast car. That's what they want.
That's the most pulp version of the secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I never watched it, but
Oh, you've got to. It's a thrill.
maybe I will. We'll see. So the idea is it's the vehicle that you want, right? Let's pretend, and you want it in this certain color. Let's say that you're actually divinely supposed to have that vehicle, and that's why you have that sensation inside of you. You're like, oh, I really want this vehicle, and so you want it, but you were actually designed to have it in blue. And in your mind, you wanted red because you haven't outgrown that need to be impressive and all the other stuff, right? And I'm not saying red is the reason, but let's just say that that's why you're manifesting it. So now you manifest this red car. And then you're driving the red car. And because red cars are pulled over more than any other car, you get pulled over. You get a ticket. Not an issue, right? But the problem is that you forget about that ticket because you're too busy manifesting and looking at your vision board and all the other stuff. And so that ticket then becomes a repo. So now they take your car, when all you needed was a blue car and you would never have been pulled over. But you can't, and your finite mind, conceive of the consequence of your actions yet, because when you turn 28, you start your prefrontal cortex. You start to really understand the future of what your consequence will be. You start that, right? Back in the ancient days, and this is like very well documented, but back in the ancient days, you were considered an infant with almost no responsibility until you were 100 years old. Do you know why? Because it took at least 60 years after getting the prefrontal cortex for you to understand the weight of your decisions. So they weren't given high responsibility roles. We are asked to be responsible at 18. How many people, and that by like, if you're listening to this right now, how many of you at 18 knew exactly everything that you needed to know and didn't make any mistakes ever again? The weight of our decisions are heavier than they've ever been. They're costing more, and they're costing our parents more, which is creating more stress, which is creating more problems, which is creating more stress on us. Mm-hmm. When we hurt other people, we break our bioantennas. It's true. You can actually look this up. Mm-hmm. Your body's DNA.
When you hurt others.
Yeah. When you hurt others. Our system is not designed to hurt others.
Yeah.
But in order to survive, because we're in critical health, we think that we have to take from others because we don't know how to give anymore. And this is different than receiving.
What about
This is
animals?
different than-
What about animals in our food?
Are we referring to pets or
Like
animals in our food? Okay.
Yeah.
When you take on the DNA of anything and you haven't cleared it, you take on the misunderstandings and the feelings and also the blessings of anything, right? Everybody kind of needs to understand the world from packets of information. If I'm eating a steak, right?
Yeah.
How that animal was treated is inside of that. Even if I've cooked it, it doesn't matter because energy cannot be destroyed.
Uh-huh.
It can be changed, it can be repurposed, it can be alchemized, it can do all kinds of things. But short of me knowing how to do that, how do I live in this world? This world where we're doing all of these things that we don't know the consequence to because we were never taught the consequence. Because I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught anything about manifestation in middle school or elementary school. I was taught Christian theology. That was the strongest thing. Like I was raised devout Christian family, like very, 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 very different upbringing. And then like when I get older, I finally realized that the Bible is actually 89 chapters or 89 books rather versus the 66 that I was told was the whole thing. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. So everything that I understood, I need to reframe. I need to get more context. Because that's the biggest misunderstanding in the world, is that we have a lack of context in everything. We do not know why we know what we know. We just know it. Okay, well, that's great, but don't you need to have the circle around it? Well, no, I don't. I know it. Okay, but do you understand it? Well, no, I don't understand it. Then, so you're teaching what you know without any understanding. How do people ground that? You haven't lived your principles. So there's no grounding of information. There's no signal that comes out. It's just regurgitation or parroting of information. Well, that doesn't evolve. So look at the people that created the greatest technologies in the world. How did they do it? They did it from starting from nothing and building back to something. If you look at everything that's ever been. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't use the resources that were already here, but they went inward and let go of everything, and that's how they got the great idea. Mm-hmm. How do we get there? Well, we get there by cleaning up our signals and our misunderstandings and everything else. Mm-hmm. Starting there, the easiest one, go out in nature every once in a while and just let yourself be there for 5 minutes if that's all it takes, right? Take your shoes off, stand on the actual earth, let yourself ground. Start to let those bioantennas repair. Get a little bit of sunlight. All of these things help your body to naturally restore and heal. When you do get to a space where you're no longer critical, and everyone listening to this, you can switch out of critical health in a second if you want. All you have to do is say, okay, I take responsibility for my health. Why am I creating what I'm creating? Now be warned that if you decide to do that, you have now stepped out of critical health into health, and now you're responsible for all of your health. That doesn't mean that you can't go to a doctor. That doesn't mean that you can't go work with other technologies. It just means that you're responsible and are going to use those technologies to learn why you are where you are versus handing over your authority to be healed. Everybody in the world that's in critical health, and this is how you'll know if you're in critical health, ask yourself, do I need others to heal me? If the answer is yes, then you're in critical health.
Jason, I was thinking as you were speaking about titling the episode Switch Out of Critical Health Now, and then you said, but be warned.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not that simple, but what I want to try to dial back to is I feel like my own effort in putting this podcast together is always, first, it's my education, which I enjoy. I like to do things that I enjoy. I think it probably makes me a better person to be around for those who I love and those I want to interact with. So it's not entirely selfish. I do have innate hang-ups over being selfish the way that I was raised, right? And so that's my own thing to process and work through. But I do think that in the world of information that we're in, EMF be damned, whatever, wherever we're getting our information from, shows like this and other shows that people like yourself are coming onto and sharing the work they've done can be beacons for
100%.
learning, can be supplements or augmentation in a way that's empowering and freeing, right? That's my best hope with anybody that comes on the show. So we need containers, right? Whether it's a box or a geodesic dome or a family or a neighborhood or a high school or a men's club or a women's club, we need containers. I wanted to get I'm glad you shared a little bit more about your orientation as a young American, and what you were indoctrinated by with systems for functioning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really that's what it's laid out. It's like, you can't do this because, and you should do this because.
It'd been cool if there was a because.
Yeah, right. Well, the because that's there is often dubious, right?
Yeah.
So, but I met you at a function here in Los Angeles, which was a quantum wellness event. And there is a facility that's being constructed, and it's where people can have access to devices that Void Space Technology has created. And the purpose of creating these devices is to expose people to ways in which they can, I don't want to sell it short by saying heal, but experience a different paradigm for health. And it's a part of all the tools in the toolkit as you step out of critical health and into health.
Yeah.
And part of taking responsibility for that is potentially maybe winding up in places that you can have access to things that will help unlock opportunities for you. But what can people do who hear this and it's resonating, but they're in other parts of the world where Is it saying to somebody who's 17 or whatever, go stand outside barefoot? Is it saying this group I'm a part of, you should start to be interested in? Is it saying meditation is my favorite way to know yourself better, 5 minutes a day for a week for starters? What are the practical applications for somebody who, because I think when I speak to you and what I feel from you is somebody who has benefited from experiencing knowledge that's been freeing. Which is, that's what we want. We don't want people to suffer. We don't want people to be wrecked in delusion at all times, and we want the planet to be bountiful and beautiful, like every fucking flower that blows your mind. We want everything to be able to be like that. I don't think there's any reason not to.
Yeah.
It's not the scarcity. It's not the antagonism. It's not the deep problems. It's the incredible potential.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some practical ways that people can just inch towards some of the things that make you happiest about what you've learned?
I think the easiest, it's reflection, right? And it's either self-reflection or reflection with others. It's not that we shouldn't have conversations. Mm-hmm. We should absolutely have conversations. It's that we should also know who we are and where we are in those conversations. So the biggest thing I have right now with the current world is that everybody's pretending to be something they're not in their own ways, right?
Where do you see that, Jason?
Mostly in the spiritual world. Like you hear these people that read one book and then they're self-proclaimed prophets, or they are these things, but they've never actually practiced those principles. That's the coaching industry in a nutshell. Most of the spiritual coaches and practitioners and business coaches and other people, they're not actually masters. They're people that are on the journey to mastery, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just be honest about it. I know a lot of people in this world that I don't necessarily associate with, but I know that they actually don't have millions of dollars, but they say they do. So they're like, hey, come work with me. I'll get you $1 million a year in revenue, but they can't get it themselves. So then how do they get to that $1 million revenue point, right? Well, they do it by taking money from others and hopefully learning lessons along the way and then sharing those lessons. I want more people to be honest about where they are. Like, hey, I'm just trying to figure this out, and you're just trying to figure this out, and we're having a conversation about it. That's awesome, because now we're real. And because we're real, we're not sharing this inflated self with the world that tells them what it should look like to arrive. We used to live in a world that had credentials. Now, everyone has a platform at any time, and most of the people that have hundreds of millions of followers aren't people that you would want as a role model for your kid.
Were the credentials gatekept, though, by access to wealth?
No, I don't think they were. I really don't. I think that the credentials, because how I grew up, right, when I became what I am, my very first class that I taught was to no one, literally. I got a venue. I was so proud. I was like, I went, I promoted it to all the people, and I sat down and I was like, and then about 10 minutes in, I realized nobody was coming.
Wait, what was this? What this?
It was called Painting Your Own Reality, and it was my very first class to ever teach.
And you put an idea. You had an idea to teach a class, a public thing, and you put up flyers in your neighborhood and stuff. And
did all that, right? Because this is before social media was a thing. It was a whole thing, right? No one showed up, paid for the room, did everything.
Okay.
No issue. I actually taught the class to the empty space.
Amazing.
Kept doing it. They kept renting the room. Yeah. Kept doing it. Kept renting the room. Kept doing it. No one showed up. Kept no one showing up, right? Eventually, the guy who owned the building was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm doing this because I know that I'm supposed to teach this class. I know that by teaching this class, even if I'm teaching to an empty room, that it's helping me learn things. Mm-hmm. So for those of you out there that don't know anything about me, I don't have something called a inner monologue. So I don't have thoughts. So the only way that I can express and understand what's actually going on within me is through talking. So if I talk to an empty room, I'm still learning about myself. Mm-hmm. I'm in self-reflection in my own way, right? Mm-hmm. So if you ever catch me just talking to a wall, I'm actually talking to myself, trying to understand things. That's just the way that I operate. Mm-hmm. I had to learn that.
Yeah.
That guy actually posted it for free to his huge network.
The guy who had the building?
Who owned the building.
Uh-huh.
And so the next class I taught had 18 people in it. And then they told other people. And then they told other people. Until eventually it became a big thing. Why? Because I showed up to the commitment that I made and I honored it. I showed up to the commitment that I made and I honored it. And it was so unique at the time because what I was teaching was nothing that I had ever read in books. I've never read books. I don't read books. I meditate. I find the answer and I have great discussions with cool people like you.
Thank you.
Because that is how we learn. We learn through exchanging ideas. Reading a book as a prompt to have great conversations is not a bad thing, but take it apart, learn from it, see all the different angles, and then you'll grow. And that's the beauty of humanity.
But so many people don't feel safe learning and growing, though. So many people don't feel safe because they're scared to color outside the lines because they'll get in trouble, you know?
Yeah.
They're reined in, they're locked in, and that line between veering off the path and having all the wheels fall off, it's just terrifying.
It is. It's a very terrifying thing. And as long as you live your life through fear, though, you're never going to feel true joy and happiness. You're going to feel moments of it, fleeting experiences.
So you persevered in having this space and making this happen, and something came of it. Now, where do you get satisfaction in interrelating with others now?
I just think that it's fun to be on Earth. Like,
Oh,
as a kid, I thought I was on the wrong planet.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time just not liking humanity.
Yeah.
Like, really, I would go into a movie theater and I would just cry my eyes out because I was bullied, I was beaten. I mean, anything you can think of that could happen to a child happened to me.
Yeah.
It was really messed up stuff.
Yeah.
But could I persevere through that? Could I learn those things? Yeah. And because I learned those things, I've been able to help so many other people through them. I understood the world through suffering into service. That was the world that I came into, right? I believe that there are 4 stages of human evolution.
Suffering into service.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got suffering, service, alchemy, and the grand alchemist.
Beautiful.
So we're now in what is called the alchemy to grand alchemist phase of humanity. So we're remembering that we don't have to have an experience to get the echelons that we used to. We're getting them through watching TV. We're getting them through having conversations, right? We're alchemizing experiences by just me and you talking about something. Right now, our fields are communicating and signaling back and forth, and we're learning all this stuff at a quantum level that we didn't know before, right? That's the download. That's called presence teaching. That wasn't available when I was a kid. When I was a kid, the highest that you could get to was suffering. In my short lifetime, we've moved as a planet into alchemy to grand alchemist, the ability to hold that presence. So do we have to suffer anymore? No. But did we when we were kids? Yes. When I was a kid, almost 40 years ago, there was no other option other than to suffer to learn. And so that's how teachers were done. And so credentials, to go back to that whole thing, credentials were hard fought. They were earned. Now, was it gate kept through education? If you want to go to talk about like those type of credentials.
A lot of kids can't afford to go to college, and that's a credentialing entity.
That is a credential.
Right.
But that isn't the credential. Like, let's talk about people that were 10,000 hours to be master of something, right? Yeah. That doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
That costs you to practice something for 10,000 hours. People that do that, those are masters too. So when we think of credentials, we think of credentials in what we're taught to think of credentials as. I think of it as an energetic understanding and awareness. So this wasn't a scripted interview, right?
No, I actually everything I said was memorized.
Oh, well, congratulations. So for me, I'm just messing with you.
Unscripted.
Yeah. So the average person that is a teacher can't do these anymore. Do you know why? Because they don't have mastery anymore. They're like, oh, well, let me quote my book. Let me do this thing here. I'm going to pull this from my head, but it's line by line from this book that I read, right? They don't have their own thoughts. They don't have original thoughts. Masters, a true master of a concept, has the ability to be asked any question on that concept and answer it.
I think the fuel for that is humility and love.
Yeah.
Like that feels like those are good starting points because you have to be able to roll with the punches, right?
Yes.
And you have to be able to empathize with every moment that arises. I think though that like part of what has enabled people to learn and envision themselves has been the systems that we've leaned on, right?
Yeah.
So like if your home life is shit, but you do have a certain amount of grades, you could get out of there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that served a purpose. Are the people who are purporting to be experts now, who you would argue aren't, they're not just going through what you did of doing the lecture in the room to no one until people start to pay attention?
The difference is when I taught, I told people that I was learning.
And you think the majority of it now is just rote.
People that tell you that they're a master are usually not.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
An actual master won't tell you.
What about the term shaman?
Shaman's used all the time now too, but the actual term shaman used to be like 20 plus years of going through the ceremonies and the things around that, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a title that you give yourself.
Right.
Shaman was given to you by a village usually, and you would train a certain way. So it's all these titles that we use to feel important that I have a problem with. I'm just Jason, right? You're just Matthew. We're having a real conversation. People will learn from it or they won't. But I'm not pretending to be a master of anything.
Yeah.
I'm just Jason. I'm learning as everybody else is. Do I have more credentials than most in what I talk about? Yeah, 100%. Does that matter? No. Because if what I say doesn't resonate with you, then that's awesome. That's you learning you. Apply that. You know what I mean? We're here to master ourselves, not to become somebody else. And at the end of the day, credentials told us in the past, they used to be something that was like, okay, this person is worth listening to because they've done X amount of hours.
Yeah, sure.
Now, credentials are used to convince you that you should pay money or do this thing. Health and wellness has become the most booming industry because everybody wants to be an authority on health and wellness, right? But the reality is that the health and wellness authorities aren't even authorities in themselves. They don't know themselves enough to be an authority. And health and wellness is the most personal thing there is. I can't give you a diet. Do you know why I can't give you a diet? Because I'm not in your body. I don't know what your body needs. I can't talk to your bioantennas and figure out the things. Then that leads me to the last thing, which is really important that I touch.
Yeah.
Optimization. Optimization is communicating with somebody else or something else, a tool, technology, whatever it is, to send a signal for you to test. So this is where it gets real interesting. People go to quantum healers now, spend thousands of dollars to go to a quantum healer to have them fix them. That's not what optimization was ever designed to be. That's not what quantum healing is. Quantum healing is me sending a signal about some kind of understanding or misunderstanding in your field, and that signal hits that panel, so to speak, and then you have the resources. You look over the panel and you see, oh, line 5 is altered, and that's where the misunderstanding is that's causing the misfire, that's causing the inflammation, that's causing my shoulder. The problem is quantum healers now go in there and fix that for you. So what happens is now it goes down to like line 14, and you have to keep doing sessions forever because you're not using it as optimization anymore. You're using it as critical health. I'm delegating my authority to you to heal me.
Yeah.
Healer, heal thyself. You're a healer. Everyone is. That's all. Everyone is a healer of themselves. Healer, heal thyself is the most important thing. You can't delegate your health to others and actually ever live a good life. You just won't, because your job is to reclaim power, not to give it away. Now, if you're going through a temporary situation and you have no other choice, and again, this is the kitchen sink thing. If you're going to be critical health and you're going through something, I'm not telling you to feel ashamed of what you're doing. I'm telling you that when you finally are in health again, because those temporary solutions are just going to get you back to that benchmark, then ask yourself what you learned, apply what you learned, and stay in health. And then if you want to do optimization work, go for it. But remember that at the end of the day, it's your journey. It's not their journey. They can't take responsibility for your journey. No matter who they are, no matter how many prestigious awards they have, no matter how many films they've been in, it doesn't matter who they are, right? They can't be you. And if you want to learn the quantum field, if you want to have infinite access to everything and know all the things that ever could exist or ever have been or ever will be, if you want that moment, nothing else can get you there other than you. And the only way that you're ever going to get to that point where you're able to even have those opportunities to have those is by knowing yourself. And you can't get there if you delegate your health or other very important concepts to others. They are not you, and they never will be. And I think that that's the most important thing. Credentials, everything in the world was designed to help you to get to this age. We are now in this age. As of March 18th of 2024, we are now in this age. And we are now in the quantum age. And because we're now in the quantum age, a new level of responsibility is asked for every human being that wants to move forward. So we're watching the world get sicker faster, right? It's happening. Mass scale. Sickness is not a bad thing. Sickness is your body being tested and your system evolving. You actually build something called an immunity. Well, immunity isn't the same thing that we think it is. But people are starting to finally figure out that by actually working and putting things into our body to like stabilizing, strengthening our microbial content, which by the way, microbes are one of the only things that translate light in your body. Just fun fact for anyone out there. So by strengthening our microbes, we're basically giving them more range to understand signals. How do we get there? Well, we get there through being sick, through actually going through experiences that help us to heal. If we can't go out into the world and live, then we're never going to know who we are.
Yeah.
So if you're in the world of a bubble and you're in critical health right now and you're listening to this podcast, the best thing you can do is do one original thing every day for the next 21 days. And what will happen is your cellular memory will realize that you want to be original. And being original means you want to be yourself again. And so what will happen is that next 21-day cycle, because it takes 42 days, 21 days to change, another 21 days to improve. In 42 days, you will actually be yourself, you'll be in health, and you'll start to understand why you were in critical health, and you'll start to repair the damage that you've caused to yourself and others. And eventually, you'll take responsibility, you'll be an authentic human being, and you'll start signaling both receiving and giving, and you'll actually heal the world around you and yourself naturally. And that is what the human birthright is.
I love to be around my nieces and nephews because they're such genuine creatures, and they give me such beautiful energy. And it's a blessing. It's truly a blessing. I moved to Los Angeles almost 2 years ago, and it was a major paradigm shift. It was getting outside of a certain box or circle and coming into a new place. And it's my delight to interact with people and welcome new information and new energy and learning all the time. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, Jason, and I appreciate you sharing what's in your heart and your mind and in your quantum and in the quantum with everyone. And I could see us going on for another hour, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do that again soon.
Yeah. Well, I'm back in LA all the time these days, so I'm down to do another one. This was amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
To have a voice on your platform.
We'll do it again, man.